Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to Rock Video Rental. We are continuing on with our classic horror movie marathon, and today we are talking about Blood and Black Lace. It is from 1964 and is directed by Mario Bava. The plot is a masked, shadowy killer brutally murders the models of a scandalous fashion house in Rome. The cast, we have Cameron Mitchell as Massimo Morlacci, Eva Bartok as Contessa Christiana Cuomo, Thomas Reiner as Ispetor Silvestri. That's a difficult name. Ariana Gorini as Nicole. Date Di Polo as Franco Scalo. Mary Arden as Peggy Payton. Yeah, there's a lot of Italian names in there.
Yeah.
Struggled a little bit. I will say that I got the Contessa Christiana Cuomo right because I was thinking about the dude from Weezer, Rivers
Nice.
Cuomo.
hmm
Uh, so it's the first time watch for me. I'm not sure I've ever seen a Mario Bava movie, and he made a lot of them.
Rock.
I've seen a fair amount of Italian horror movies. Um, yeah, but I think this is the first Mario Bava I've seen.
Okay. Definitely for me. So,
I've seen more Lucio Fulci movies, which were more grindhouse style movies and gore movies. Like he did zombie, um,
oh yeah, you've talked
zombie,
about
well, quote unquote zombie, aka Zombie 2. Really confusing there. I will say a thing with this is Italian movies were always dubbed over. Even if the actor was speaking English, it would still be dubbed over in English.
that. Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, did you notice that some of the words didn't match up?
Well, at first, um, I think the first scene they were outside during a storm or something,
Mm-hmm.
and so I thought that it was that they were doing the dubbing because like maybe it was too loud outside.
Yeah, everything was added in post.
Yeah.
It was ADR.
Mm.
Um, that was a big thing with Italian movies back in the day. I'm not sure how they do it now, but all the Italian horror movies I've seen were done like that. Also, all the Italian horror movies I've seen are kind of confusing at times. This one was a little more structured than a lot of them that I've seen. This was considered the first quote unquote Giallo movie, which Giallo is Italian for yellow.
Okay.
I'm, I can't remember why they refer to these as Giallos, but they're
You-
kind of like predecessors of um, the slasher movie.
I just want to be like, you put the shallow in the pudding.
The Giallo! Duh. uh, yeah, so apparently it comes from this long running series of pulp novels called Giallo Mondadori or something like that,
Hmm.
where they're basically just like mysteries. But a common thing with the Giallo movies is that you get a killer who either has his face in shadows or is covered up, and they wear black leather gloves and stalk people and kill them.
Oh, okay.
There's quite a bit of them, and this kind of started the whole craze of it. Um, yeah, so man, I thought this movie was a little sluggish at times, and it is only 88 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I just had a hard time really getting into it. And I don't know if it was just, sometimes you watch a movie and you're right there for it. Some other times you got to be in the mood. Maybe I just wasn't in the mood.
Yeah. Well, thing to start off with, which was kind of interesting. You watched it before I did, and you made the comment that it was a slow burn movie. And so I was like preparing myself for something like The Bad Seed or Carnival of Souls. and it was definitely not on that scale. I mean, I can see where you can still make the comment that maybe it's a slow burn, but this one at least had things progressively happening. Like people were dying
Yeah,
in
it
this
gets
one.
it gets to the killing really fast, I'll say
Yeah.
that. But I thought that the pacing of the movie itself was pretty slow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
I
could
thought
agree.
this movie, honestly, I thought it was a little boring,
Mm,
and maybe I just isn't the kind of movie for me. Where you kind of had the similar experience with Carnival of Souls, but I was more invested in that movie, and I'm
yeah.
not sure why.
Well, I can see and agree with you with the pacing of the movie. Um, I can see where you can be coming from that, but as far as like the times when the killer was going after someone, they really did a good job, I thought, of like drawing you in and making it a very intense sequence,
Hmm.
compared to a lot of the other movies that we've seen where I mean, of course, like a lot of them are products of their time, but you can see progress in this one being the most recent of all of them so far, where I thought they did a fantastic job of making it very eerie, creepy, scary when those times came up. Like there was a lot of time in between each person who died. So that kind of goes along with what you were saying about pacing. But when they got into it, um it was the combination between the advancement in filming and also the music that they were doing with it, that I thought did a really good job of drawing you in and increasing that scare factor.
Yeah, I will say this movie did a good job of building like atmosphere and
Hmm.
suspense. Where, the Giallo movie relied heavily on suspense and like building of dread and more than like slashers did.
Hmm.
Where slashers took like the basic elements of a Giallo movie and then cranked it up to 11.
Yeah.
Where like you watch something like this and then you watch something like um The Mutilator or something like that, or Pieces even, uh where the kills in this are relatively tame, where like the kills in those other movies I mentioned are like extreme.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Really, the only one that I thought was pretty crazy was when the killer was pushing that girl's face on that hot iron.
Yeah.
That was pretty intense. That would have made me go oh a few times because like he puts her hands on it and then pulls it off, and her hands are just like the flesh on it is just like dripping almost.
Hmm.
It is so gross. And then he pushed her face on there. The killer is kind of creepy looking,
Yeah.
wearing like a black coat, a black hat, and then like a flesh colored mask with like no features on it, almost like um one of those nylon bodysuits, like Green Man from Always
Yeah.
Sunny.
It made me think of how they would often depict the Invisible Man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like his face is wrapped up.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is just like a nylon sheath that they pulled
Yeah.
over their head. Yeah, I thought they did a good job um with the looks of the killer because it is creepy looking. Anytime you have a killer who has like a blank, emotionless face, it's effective. Um, something like um, I th- I think that Jason in Friday 13th Part 2 is creepier than Hockey Mask Jason.
Hmm.
The potato sack or whatever he's got on his head.
Yeah.
I think is creepier. Michael Myers mask is really the big one, like the pale, emotionless face.
Hmm.
Like hardly any features to it. It's just creepy. And also that we've done in this marathon, the mask from Eyes Without a Face is
Yes.
very
Yeah.
creepy. Some of the other kills we got like some stranglings and some stabbings. Um, Nothing really too crazy to mention with it. Like you said, it was more about suspense and like the build up to it than really what how the girl gets killed.
Hmm.
There's kind of a part towards the end where I kind of lost what was going on, and I don't know if it was when I was watching it because I was a little busy when I was watching it. Um, how the one guy and the girl are teaming up together
Yeah.
to like take these girls out.
Hmm.
That kind of like caught me off guard. I'm like, wait a second, I had to go back and like read about what happened.
Yeah. No, it kind of was confusing for me too because uh I figured from the beginning when the countess found the first body that she was the killer.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was just kind of like, oh, I bet they're misleading you, where she finds the first body and she acts surprised, and then everybody's just like, oh, it's not her. So I thought it was her from the beginning, but then when you find out that it was a combination, that it was a team essentially, that was a little surprising. So essentially, what it winds up being is that the original girl who was killed was getting involved with blackmailing. And I think the main thing that she was blackmailing was that the countess, her husband had died in a car accident, and it was not an accident. And so she was blackmailing the countess and Massimo, was that his
Yeah,
name? Or
yeah, Massimo.
Massimo. And so then he decided to take her out, but then he wound up needing the countess, the help of the countess later, or Contessa. Why am I saying countess? Sorry. Contessa.
She
Well,
was considered the countess in the English version.
oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's probably where that came from. So yeah, so originally it was him, but then she teamed up to help him because it was covering up the blackmail. And then they just wound up having to kill more people because there was a diary that had information in it and everything. So first you find out that the way that's revealed is like, oh, well, we thought it was one of the guys who was the killer, but they had everybody in jail and then somebody else died. So it can't be any of them. And then Massimo had his little black book, which was seen earlier. So then he's involved to a certain extent. They reveal
Mm-hmm.
that's the team of um, the two actors and actresses, and then they try to pin it on somebody else, and then that's when it gets even more twisted because Massimo attempts to make Contessa have an accident and essentially die and then take the blame for everything.
Yeah.
And that's when it got super confusing for me because she um of course everybody thinks that she dies because she fell from like two stories or something like that.
Yeah.
And then Massimo is by himself, and then all of a sudden something is creeping and lurking around him. And so you're like, what the heck? Who else is going on here? Turns out that Contessa survived and she comes back to kill Massimo before she winds up like succumbing to her wounds. And it was like a twist on top of a twist. So it got pretty confusing at the end.
Yeah, which is pretty common for Italian movies. Um, yeah, at least most of them that I've seen. There's been
Mm,
a lot of confusing stuff in it. Um, I will say too, the when she slits the wrist of that one lady in the bathtub,
mm-hmm.
that was really unnerving too because like she's legit underwater, that actress, with her eyes open.
Yeah.
Like that wasn't like a dummy or anything. That was a real woman under the water with her eyes wide open, and she's like pale and has like the red lipstick and like the blood starts rushing up. Um, and I like too how the blood in this is like the Dawn of the Dead, bright reddish orange blood. That's not realistic at all. That made me laugh a little bit. Um, so like the acting and stuff in this, I thought was fairly good.
Yeah.
Um, the dialogue was kind of meh, but it's kind of hard to tell because it's all ADR, which is,
Yeah.
like I said, was common in Italian horror. Um, so yeah, I would say as far as what's good in it, I would say the acting is pretty solid.
Hmm.
Um, the suspense built was pretty good. I would say that's borderline great.
Yeah. Yeah, I would put that as a great quality for me personally. Like every time there was a scene that you knew somebody, like even at the end when I was just talking about Massimo, like he heard something and he knew like somebody was there. I was a little on edge because I was just like, what the crap is going on? Because it's just like he was the bad guy. He killed Contessa. Like, what else is going on? And how can there be something else happening right now?
Yeah.
So,
Um, I don't know. I guess maybe things that didn't work so well. There's not a lot. And it's really just personal preference. I thought the pacing of it was a little slow. It felt like it was long for an hour and a half.
mhm.
But that's really just me because you didn't seem to have the same experience with it.
You suck. No, I'm just kidding.
Anything else you want to talk about before I get to the trivia and facts?
Yeah, so I'll mention a couple things. It was kind of tricky. It's one of those things that you gotta take it for what it is. Kind of like when we did Godzilla, those things are outside, or especially like Nosferatu early on. Like, there's a specific area that this falls into, with
Hmm.
it being like the Italian horror. So that whole dubbing thing, it's just like it's a little bit of a hindrance, but it is what it is. It's not really a bad quality. It was just something that was what they did. So, yeah, it was an interesting concept. I honestly felt most of the time that the film felt more like a murder mystery than a horror movie. Um, I know you could kind of maybe put a fine line between those because a lot of times, in horror movies, there's the detective who shows up and is trying to figure things out. But just from the, and maybe it was kind of how they were showing it, because one very key moment in the movie for me was when they discovered the diary.
Hmm.
And then the one girl put her in her purse and it was sitting on the table. And then they show everybody watching it. And so that just kind of, I don't know, that was one of the things that really drove home for me, like, man, this is almost more like a murder mystery than a a horror movie. Also because only one person had died by that point. And and it's just kind of showing you like, oh, could this person be interested in the diary, and could they be the bad person? And they just go through a progression. They didn't even show everybody, but they showed a huge slew of characters on being like, who could it be? And so it was kind of an interesting feel for me. So honestly, like if I had watched this movie and we were not doing it for this month, I would almost classify it more as a murder mystery than a horror movie.
Yeah.
Um, Definitely as it progresses, it definitely fell into the horror movie, because you do have that stalker killer lurking in the shadows. Um, and they bump up that scare and fear factor. There were some things that were just weird to me. Um, and some of them kind of got explained with time. Um, I'm not going to get into this one too much, but there was the what was that? I think his name was like Marco Franco. Yeah, Franco, I think.
Yeah.
Who's the art antique guy, and he needed an alibi, and he just like randomly showed up at somebody's house and was just like, "Hey, you need to be my alibi." And then he's just like, "Oh, well, I know that you have to that you need my help as much as you need I need your help because you have this reason for wanting to have killed this person." And it's just like, what? Like random. So that was a little weird, but the weirdest part for me that really did not make sense to me, and I cannot remember her name. Um she was one of the last girls to die, where she drove home from the salon place and she discovered that there was a body in her trunk.
Mm-hmm.
And so she took the body out and hid it inside of her house. And it's like, well, first of all, one, why didn't you like just shove it back in the trunk and try to hide it there? First of all, but then second of all, like what, I don't know. Sometimes with those things that always just gets to me where it's just like how if you didn't do it would you not leave it alone and just call the police? Cuz like she went in, somebody was calling the house and she picked up the phone and then she hung it up and she didn't call the police or anything. I don't know. It's one of those things. It's kind of like when people split up or stuff in horror movies where you're just like, yeah, I don't know if that would happen in real life.
Right. Yeah, I wondered that as well. I was like, I don't know about you, but if I found a body in my trunk, I'd be like, oh, I'm not touching that thing,
Right.
and I'm gonna call the cops.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'd be scared out of my mind about like them thinking it was me, but also at the same time, it's just like I know better than to touch it and to move it
Yeah.
because that's just gonna make things worse.
Yeah, because then you're gonna have your fingerprints on it, and then you're gonna show that you wanted to hide it.
Hmm.
But yeah. Trivia and facts?
Rock.
Alright. So, due to the film's low budget, Mario Bava actually mounted the camera on a child's wagon and used it for tracking shots.
Hmm.
So it's considered a landmark film in Italian cinema because it began the Giallo genre. The Giallo genre remains Italy's longest running cinematic movement.
Rock.
So actress Mary Arden wrote most of the English dialogue for the film. The film was dubbed into English for overseas marketing. So most of the male characters were dubbed by Paul Frees for the American release of the film, including Cameron Mitchell. Evidently, the Wolner brothers couldn't be bothered to bring him in to loop his own lines because he's American. So this movie was filmed in 7 weeks.
Hmm.
So while shooting the scene where Peggy's body falls out of the car trunk, a painful mishap occurred.
Oh no.
Uh, Despite Baba's repeated warnings to Leah Lander in rehearsals that the trunk lid must be opened fully before she reacts to the dead body, in the first take, the trunk lid wasn't open far enough and it slammed back down on and striking Mary Arden painfully on the nose, narrowly missing her eyes.
Ooh, gosh.
She was in shock and sobbing uncontrollably. Bava immediately halted the filming and quickly carried her inside the house to comfort her while the others tended to her injuries. It took a couple of hours to get her to calm down, and the mishap would leave a scar on her nose.
Ugh.
Years later, she would joke and say that doing the film almost killed her.
Dude, that's an old car, and those trunk lids were not light. That would have
Yeah, that
really
must have
hurt.
really hurt.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh.
So, the budget, I got an interesting thing here for you, is 147 million lira.
What?
In the box office was 137 million lira. I did the conversion. I had to do some research to do it.
Okay.
So the budget is $226,000, and the box office was $219,000.
Okay.
Yeah, because when I saw all I could find was lira, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is annoying. So I had to try to like find a conversion rate. Well, Italy doesn't use lira anymore.
Hmm.
I believe they use euros. So then I had to look up what was the conversion rate from Italian lira to American dollars in 1964. And I found a chart and did the math. So I did my
Nice.
work on that one. Well, because we always like to try to compare them, but it's like you can't compare lira to dollars.
Yeah.
It's like without the conversion chart.
Hmm.
But so now on to grades. Pulled from IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. What do you think they are?
7.5.
It is a 7.1.
Okay. Rotten Tomato critic, 85.
It is 80.
Okay. Audience, 88.
75.
Oh, went down. Okay.
Yeah. I'll let you go first this time.
Okay. So again, trying to take a step back and critique this for what it is and everything, kind of in the genre of everything that we've been watching, but also I'm not very familiar with Italian films as much as you are, um, in this genre, but I I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I wasn't blown away by it. Like I said, the one thing that I would definitely have to classify as great was the suspense and the atmosphere that they created for the killer and those scenes. It was a little confusing. I wasn't bothered as much about it being a slow drag. I do agree that it went from like a really high point on, usually the kill scenes to really slow after that. Um, but it wasn't really problematic to me. The biggest problem was how it was a little bit scattered throughout. Like there were a couple things that they would just throw information at you real quick, and it was kind of hard a little bit to keep track of them. But the biggest part was um, at the end. It really kind of they threw so much at you so fast to kind of wrap it up, um, that I liked and appreciated the twists, but also then it was kind of like, okay, maybe it was a little bit too much. Um, so definitely not like a perfect film for me, but I did like it enough and think that it did really well that I'm giving a 4.5 out of 5.
Rock. Oh, yours is higher than mine. I kind of figured it would be. I might have to watch this another time where maybe I'm more in the mood to, or I don't, in a state of mind to watch it. I wouldn't say mood because I didn't go in like with a bad mood about it.
Right.
I guess maybe just not prepared for a slower feeling movie.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know. I've always like, there's things with Italian movies that I enjoy. Um, Usually like they're a lot more brutal at times than American movies from the same time. Which we kind of see that with the face melting scene, and then the girl in the bathtub too. But this is like miles away from what Italian movies would become with directors like Dario Argento and Lucio Fulci and Umberto Lenzi, especially Fulci and Lenzi. Like those guys, some of their movies were just super brutal. Like they made like the cannibal movies and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. Um Especially Eaten Alive is one of them, and then Cannibal Ferox is another one too that's really brutal. But there's a lot of things this movie did well, other things that maybe just didn't strike home with me. And I know that the Giallo genre has a big following, and I don't know, it just maybe it leaves me wanting more a lot of times, and it's because probably because I like slasher movies so much, and these were like the predecessor for them.
Mm-hmm.
So they, yeah, like I said, it's the slasher genre is basically the Giallo movie cranked up to 11. But I might have to go back and watch some other ones to see if, maybe it's just this one I had a harder time with, or maybe just some other ones. Um, but I don't know. It was done really well, and like the suspense was really good, so I had to give it a higher grade. But I ended up landing on a 3.5.
Rock.
Maybe on future rewatches, it'll bump it up for me.
Rock.
But I believe that was our only Italian movie. And we've done a wide variety of different countries this time.
Yeah.
We did Nosferatu as a German movie, so
Then we did a Spanish movie, a
yeah,
Japanese movie.
yeah,
What was
Italian.
what was Frankenstein?
That was American.
Okay.
So yeah, like, the Universal monster movies are American.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
Yeah, gosh.
Oh, terrible.
Yeah, I didn't even like plan on covering so many different countries, but it's kind of funny that we did. I think that's all the countries we covered, though.
I believe so.
Yeah, I guess the rest of them were American movies. But the next time we'll be talking about another classic and really a transitional movie, um, going from the more classic style of horror to a more modern feel, and what would usher in um, horror of like the 70s and 80s. And we're going to be talking about Night of the Living Dead, which is a movie I've seen quite a few times. So it'll be fun to, I don't know, pay a little more attention to it this time and break some things down on it. And that'll be ending our Halloween marathon. So I figured it was a good one to go out on.
Rock.
So then, until then, as always, be kind and rewind.